Welcome to our Mission Control breakfast briefing. We've got a great program today with Geier, who is an award-winning architect, a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. He trained at University of Virginia. He's got a list of awards that if I started reading, followed by his list of projects, we'd be here till Friday. So I'm not going to do all of that, but I will tell you a little bit about Mission Control, and then I'll turn it over to Guy, who can tell you about some of those projects and his expertise in green architecture. As some of you know, Mission Control is now in its 5th year. We're a New York City-based nonprofit think tank, and we're made up of a group of seasoned business leaders who are all committed in our work, either exclusively or substantially, to working with nonprofit organizations from law, finance, architecture, banking, strategic marketing, development, leadership, HR, cost recovery, in a host of other expertise that we collect and get together. We share ideas, and then periodically we put on various programs, including our breakfast briefing programs. Our purpose is to support and empower those people who want to make change in the nonprofit sector, and to really help that community be the leaders that many envision that community should be for us. And we firmly believe that when nonprofit leaders are informed often by each other and inspired by what they see going on in the space, and with the latest information, they're really able to help their organizations fulfill their mission and increase their impact on whatever corner of the world they're looking to make better. These are some of our Mission Control members. We've had some updates, and I see we don't have all the latest members, including Guy. Excuse me. Our co-founders are Neil Fleischman, who is the regional director of Payday and a board chair of the Queens Botanical Garden. Our other co-chair is Jeff Ledet, who's the president and creative director of Letter 7 Brands. We have longtime members, Bobby Girantano, co-founder of Recovery Guardian, which is an organization that helps nonprofits and for-profits as well, I imagine, recover unspent insurance premiums from government entities. Myself, Josh Nathan, I'm an attorney and principal of the law firm of Joshua C. Nathan PC, and a longtime member of Mission Control, and about half my practice is attending to nonprofit organizations. We have Heidi Sidley, who's the principal and managing director of Stone Street Equity, which helps nonprofits and other organizations with their benefit plans. And we have the great Claudia Zeldin, who is a partner with Growth for Good. They exclusively serve nonprofit organizations, and they help them with planning, strategy, fundraising, interim leadership, and a host of other things that nonprofits need. And she's also one of the original members. We will looking to see if any of our other members are on our screen today. If they are, I'll introduce them. Nope. So look, I'm going to turn it over now to Guy, who's one of our newer members, and he's got a really interesting program on green architecture. And with that, Guy, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Josh. I'm going to just put my screen up here. Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Looks good.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all this morning, bright and early. I had an adventurous morning already with New Jersey Transit, so I'm just glad that I'm here at all. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about sustainable design and the importance of that in general, but also the value that it has for not-for-profit organizations. And we'll talk a little bit about FX Collaborative, and then I'm going to highlight a few projects that we've been involved with that are green projects for not-for-profit. The firm is about a 140-person firm. We're headquartered in Brooklyn, and we developed this mission statement that really focused on the way we work and how we go about doing our projects. Intelligence being what we bring from our experience, intuition being what we bring from our gut and our instincts, and interconnection being really how we work as always a collective with other participants. And we always look to develop projects that are important to their place, that they respect the planet, and of course that's all about what sustainability is. That we try to understand our clients' cultures and view that into the design that we do, and that we always do it from a place of bringing diversity and social responsibility to the project. And I think sustainable design is a critical component of that social responsibility. The firm has a fairly diverse practice. We work in all of these different sectors, and they all kind of inform each other. We learn a lot when we do residential projects that we can incorporate into commercial work. It's quite an interesting time that many of these are cross-fertilize each other. So, not to start out with the bad news, but I'm sure some of you have heard and read about the new studies that have come out, the IPCC science studies that kind of warn us that we're woefully behind, and if we it's not impossible, but we're really behind the 8 ball in terms of meeting our goals to hold temperatures and overall global temperature to a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase. And there's been a lot in the news about this recently, and buildings themselves contribute about 40% of greenhouse gases in the world, and so we are working in a sector that can make a big difference. This is just a graph that shows the kind of trajectory of where things are going, and how we can, through implementation of the right policies and practices, we can get warming down to the 1.5 degree target, which is what we're trying to do, but it's becoming more and more difficult as each day goes by. We've also found that through a number of surveys that the Well Building Institute and the United States Green Building Council have done, that there are a lot of benefits to people forgetting about the larger topic of climate change and trying to hold that at bay, that there are a lot of benefits to the people that occupy these spaces, from productivity gains, higher performance by the employees in these spaces, satisfaction on the job. The people feel better when they are in LEED and well designed buildings. That daylight and views enhances performance as well, and so all of these things contribute to employees also feeling that the company that they work for, the organization that they work for, if they're in that kind of a sustainable facility or environment, that it contributes to the mission and the vision and the values of the organization. And so, especially in the not-for-profit world, we find that resonates a great deal with the organizations and their boards and the people that work in those organizations. So I'm going to highlight a few projects here that we've completed over the last decade that I think highlight some of the things that we can do and the great results we can achieve. So the National Audubon Society brought us on board. They were moving out of a building that they had owned for quite a long time. It really wasn't serving them very well, and it was not, to their mission of the environment and bird habitats that they really felt they needed to have a very high performance space to move into. So we worked with them during the site search, looked at a number of different locations, and came down to this space on Varick Street, which was an old printing facility. The Wall Street printing plants that were down there, and it was being repurposed and reset for office users, and so this was a great opportunity for them to come in and kind of take a full floor and fit it out to their needs. The way we went about this is that their old space had a lot of closed offices and very few open workstation areas. So the planning of the space itself took a different tack, and you can see on both sides of the core area in the middle here that it's all open plan. Even these elements that look like closed offices are not actually full height. They're glass enclosed spaces that are the offices, but nothing is full height except for conference rooms and mechanical spaces that serve the whole space. The kind of the key ingredients to the space that I wanted to highlight is that by keeping all the closed office, well, eliminating closed offices, but keeping everything off of the window, you can see that around the perimeter of the space, there are no offices or workstations directly up against the window. We can maximize daylight and views from the space, so everybody has the benefit of the windows. We also incorporated daylight dimming, which there are sensors mounted on the light, so if enough light is coming in through the windows, the lights either dim or turn off. We used a lot of locally built furniture, both from large manufacturers like Herman Miller, but also some other local furniture makers, which I'll show in a few minutes. We used all low VOC, volatile organic compound finishes, so everything was selected so it was not going to off-gas paint, carpet, things like that. We used low flow fixtures, and at that time this was a kind of ahead of the curve because there weren't a lot of choices available at that time, but now there are, and it really has become part of the code anyway. Reclaimed barn siding, which we found in upstate New York for some of the wall finishes. Underfloor air, which was a very interesting system, which we still use on some of our projects these days, but was really a way to reduce the amount of energy needed to supply air into the space. So I'll show you a better illustration of this, but basically underfloor air uses low volume, low velocity air, conditioned air that is pushed into a raised floor and then comes out through vents in the floor and then conditions the air in the space, and hot air rises. So as the heated air and the bodies of the occupants heat the air, the hot air rises. It's pulled out at the top of the space by return air ductwork, and it continues and gets reconditioned and pushed out. But because of the way that the airflow works out of the floor, it can be at a low volume with low fan speeds and less energy needed to cool the space. And then, recycled bamboo millwork is one example, but we used a lot of recycled and recyclable materials on this project. Now, one of the predominant rating systems for sustainability is the LEED system, which is the United States Green Building Council program that really started the push towards sustainable design. And you basically start at the beginning of a project before much design is even done, and you look at the space or the project itself and decide what points you can get and what is achievable on this project. We felt from the beginning that we could get to LEED Platinum, which is the highest certification level available in the LEED system. There are 4 levels: certified, silver, gold, and platinum. Back when we did this project, getting to platinum was a big push. It still is these days, and our current office space ourselves that we designed and moved into about a year or so ago is a LEED Platinum project as well, but the categories and materials have gotten a little more stringent since we did this project for Audubon. But nevertheless, at the time that we did this for Audubon, this was the highest rated LEED interiors project in the country. And happy to say now our office space is in that position of being the highest rated LEED Platinum office space in the country. So you really look at all of the opportunities to qualify for points. Some of it has to do with transportation and just the location of the project. Water efficiency is important. Optimal energy performance in your mechanical and electrical systems, a big part of it. The materials that you choose and how much is recycled, how much is recyclable, and where they came from. How close to the project site did the materials come from? And then indoor environmental quality is obviously a critical component. So low emitting materials, as we said, low VOC, and thermal comfort, daylight reviews, all those count towards the points that get you to a LEED rating. So this is just an example of some of the materials. As I mentioned, this Herman Miller My Studio system was something that was manufactured within 500 miles of the site, which qualified for points in the LEED rating system, and all the other furniture that we selected also met those kinds of criteria. So this is an image of the space just behind the reception. We use these folding doors that open the conference room so that they could have larger meetings in this space if they wanted. But again, this is an example of the recycled barn material that we had on the screen wall. Excuse me. We were able to use old growth logs that were in a fabricator's shop and have these tables fabricated just in upstate New York. You can see the concrete slab here that's exposed, but then steps up to the raised floor, and you can see the diffusers around the perimeter that bring in the air. There is no ductwork in this floor. It's all just pressurized by the mechanical system, and the air comes out through these vents. And then, as I said, the cool air rises, it's heated as it's in the space, and then goes out through the return. This is a view of the open plan area. We again incorporated indirect lighting, because it's a great even source of lighting, but these are all controlled with daylight dimming systems. There's also, because it's open plan, there's a sound masking system that is emitted by these speakers in the ceiling. So there's a very low frequency, low volume, and if you weren't listening really carefully for it, you wouldn't hear it. But it's enough to mask conversation beyond 10 feet away. So it makes a big difference in an open plan space like this. This is as close to a closed office as we got in the space. So this is one of the senior exec offices. You can see that there's no ceiling, there's an acoustic panel that's floated in the space, but there's no hard ceiling in this, so that as the air comes out of these diffusers into this space, it can be drawn out through the top without any ductwork. This is one of the, another component of the office system. Again, a lot of people were coming out of closed offices and wanted some degree of privacy, but we all decided that we didn't want full height partitions. So we kind of worked with Herman Miller to invent this, one of the client team leaders called the officicle, as a combination of an office and a cubicle. But it was very successful in achieving a certain degree of privacy for those people without being fully enclosed. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the second project. This is a project we completed for the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. RBF was started in the 50s when John D. Rockefeller gave what then was a lot of money, but it was about $2 million to his 4 sons and daughter. Somehow the daughter got left out because it's Rockefeller Brothers Fund, but there were 4 brothers and a daughter who basically started a endowment with that seed money, and it has now grown into an incredible philanthropy that the Rockefeller family uses to support sustainability programs, social justice causes around the world. And it's quite an interesting organization. As a matter of fact, about 4 years or so ago, they got rid of all of their investments in carbon-based companies. And so this was kind of an interesting turn of events for an organization founded by the Rockefellers, who made their fortune through selling oil and gasoline. And they disavowed themselves of any carbon-based investment, which was pretty telling. So we did this space. We again helped them with their space search and found this space in what is known by many people as the God Box up in the Upper West Side, just across from Columbia University. It has a lot of not-for-profit religious organizations there, and RBF was able to lease almost an entire floor up there. And again, their target here, because of their mission, was also consistent with building a highly sustainable LEED Platinum project. So this is the entry area coming in, and we wanted to capitalize on the views out the windows towards the Hudson River and the Palisades on the other side of the Hudson. So we were able to open this space up to do that and bring a lot of light into the public spaces. And then this is kind of the basic organization of the space. Again, they were going through a kind of cultural change themselves, very similar to the Audubon Society, where they really wanted to democratize this space and open it up and get all the closed offices off the outside wall. So as you can see here, the closed offices are inboard. These all have glass fronts to the offices, so they can look out and through the windows, but they're not against the windows. And the space between the offices and the windows is all the support space and all the workstations. So the maximum amount of natural light is brought in. Again, you use LED lights with occupancy sensors, moving offices off the outside wall, maximize the views in the daylight. The only closed spaces that really were out on the outside wall facing west towards the Hudson were the communal spaces. So the cafe, a meeting room, the boardroom, another conference room here, and the president's office at the corner. Otherwise, everybody was pulled off of the window. Again, high recycled content in the materials that we use, low VOC finishes, daylight dimming, renewable and recyclable materials, low flow fixtures, and refurbished, many pieces of refurbished furniture. The Rockefellers had quite a collection of mid-century modern classics in their possession. chairs designed by George Nelson and the Eameses and others of great repute. If you're in the furniture business, you'll recognize those names. But anyway, we reused as much of that furniture as possible, had it recovered, and they now have it in their office. Another example just of the LEED rating system. I won't go through all of this again, but 80 points is the target for platinum. We were able to achieve 80 points. But the real story here is that this was done in a building that did not have any infrastructure that was really supportive to doing and achieving LEED Platinum. We had to work very closely with the building management to get the base building system to perform in a way that it was going to allow us to do this. And that's a key thing, that buildings themselves do not necessarily need to be LEED rated buildings for you to be able to achieve a LEED or a highly efficient, energy efficient interior space within them. It's really about the things, working with the things that you have to play with. The other point I would also want to make here is that doing a LEED rated project these days is not necessarily more expensive than not doing LEED. There's one factor, which is that the U.S. Green Building Council has a registration fee that they charge, which is a fixed number depending on the size of the project. So that is an added cost. But beyond that, doing a sustainable interiors project or a sustainable project really almost of any kind, there's not really much of a premium, if any, these days. It used to be that we would look at 5 to 10% premium for doing a LEED project at the platinum level, but that was in the days when there was not a lot of choices in terms of materials and systems from the manufacturing side, and it wasn't as competitive a situation. Now manufacturers, vendors have all gotten on board, and the industry has really changed over the last decade or 15 years, and pretty much anything that you want, from carpeting to ceiling materials to wall covering to whatever, you have selections that are just highly sustainable selections at no additional cost from something that isn't. We've actually, within our firm, we've purged our library of anything that is not a sustainable material. And my partner, Ann, who's on this group, has been spearheading, Paul has been spearheading that exercise and effort at the office. And we never have any problem finding appropriate materials to use on projects. Again, this is just the floor plan layout that illustrates the same point of interior closed offices along the core, on both sides and wrapping around, and then open plan workspace along the windows where everybody can get a maximized view. This is the view of the office space itself, with the open plan to the left and the windows, and closed offices with glass fronts and sliding doors to maximize their ability to look out and get light as well. You can also see here again the open plan with the sound masking system, daylight dimming, no exposed ductwork. All the ductwork is above the ceiling, where we dropped it over the offices, and the air is blown out from there, so we have no exposed ductwork in the space. Sometimes we even have an opportunity to make an operational change for an organization that increases their efficiency, which isn't exactly about LEED, but it does improve an organization's efficiency. This is something that's called the Grant Hub. It used to be in their old space that all the grants that were being reviewed by folks at RBF made their way, the grant folders made their way around the office from one person to another, sometimes getting lost in the process, sometimes just taking a long time to get looked at. And we suggested to them that rather than the grants holders working from person to person, that the people should come to the grant holders. So we established this grant hub. All the grant holders are in those cubbies, and as people review them, the next person comes along, and it cut in half the time it took for them to review grants and get them approved. So that was kind of cool. This is the kind of committee meeting room adjacent to the boardroom. Uh, uh, the cafe, again, to the right are the windows and the views out to the Hudson River. This space is all sustainable materials, linoleum, not vinyl flooring, but linoleum flooring, bamboo cabinet work, ice stone, which is actually a pool surfacing product that's made in Brooklyn, and a number of other things that fall into that category. And creating different nooks and crannies for people to meet and have lunch and get together and talk formally. We also incorporated these doors that we found up at Cantico, and I'll talk more about where we found this in a minute, but we wanted to use something in the space that tied this space back to the Rockefeller Estate in Tarrytown at the Cantico Hills. And we found these doors in a storage building and had them refinished and reused. And it sort of just speaks to the whole idea of reuse and using, finding new ways to use old materials. And some of the office space adjacent, we created these little sitting areas for people to talk and get together adjacent to the windows. And then the final project I'm going to show you is also something that was done for the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, but we just recently completed the Rockefeller Creative Arts Center up in Tarrytown. This was originally a orangery where the fruit trees were stored during the winter. It's a historic landmark building. This is an original photo. But you can see it was kind of taken over by ivy and in pretty bad disrepair. And this is now what it is after we renovated it and repurposed it. It is also a highly sustainable LEED Platinum project, and in this case, a net zero project, meaning that it through the use of the PVs and the energy saving devices that we use, the building does not consume more power than it produces through the PVs. So it's pretty exciting for such a small landmark building. This is the interiors as it originally was used. It was again used to store the fruit trees. Those doors that I talked about in the previous project were found by me and one of my designers in this building, which was being used as a storehouse. The trees were never in here anymore, and it was really a disaster. But they finally decided to renovate the project into a performing arts center. So this is what it is now, and it's really an amazing space. You can see these double row of columns that went down through the space. We had to remove them and create a whole new structural system in the ceiling to allow those. You can see the vestiges of those columns up in the ceiling above the pipe grid. And we created in one half of the building a performing arts facility with a dance floor that also opens up. The whole side of the building opens up so that performances can happen both on this floor or outside, or we can set up seating on the outside and have performances inside when the weather's great. So it's become a really great flexible kind of an environment. And then the other half of the building has been designed as a visual arts center for painters and sculptors to do their work and to exhibit it as well. So you can see this is just a kind of great reuse of a great landmark building. And as much as possible, we love to use buildings like this because there's something called embodied energy, which means that there was a lot of energy used to build buildings in the first place. And so it's the most sustainable project is, the most sustainable building is an existing building. So the more that we can use our existing building stock and repurpose it and reuse it, the less energy we'll use to build it, but also the less energy we'll need to operate it. And that's my presentation. And I'd be happy to address any questions anyone has.
I think one of the things that struck me, Guy, was your note about how building a sustainable green building is not any longer a more expensive endeavor. I think years ago when it started, many of us thought that that was something that, oh, if I want to get LEED certified, or if I want to do something that is, you know, green and sustainable, I'm going to be paying an incredible premium. And of course, nonprofit organizations and really any businesses looking to reduce costs, not increase them. And now it seems like it's really about making a choice and a commitment as opposed to a financial decision.
Yeah, and the other side of the equation is also just on the operating side. So when we design a project at a high level of energy efficiency and sustainability, the operating costs are also much lower. And, you know, for a tenant taking a lease, there have to be lease terms. It's not, you know, we can't use the same lease terms we used to. There are green leases now that allow the tenant to benefit from the cost saving. There's a lot of landlords that charge energy, you know, electric charges are part of the rent. And so there's no, in an old style lease, there would not necessarily be any incentive built in for the tenant. But green leases allow that to happen so the tenant themselves benefit from the saved. So the operating side of the equation is equally important, and that's really where a lot of the cost savings come in over the long term.
Do you see any, I'm looking at some of the questions that are coming in. Do you see any challenges that are specific to working with nonprofits?
I think, well, as is the case with every client, they're all different, but but I think the major difference is that we've tended to see that the boards are very involved, that they've set a vision for the project or for the not-for-profit organization that they want to see fulfilled in the spaces that they do, the buildings that they build. So the boards are generally more involved, and that's a good thing, I think, because everybody buys in as a result of that. And I think the other is that budget is very important. I mean, not-for-profits generally for capital projects like we've seen have to go through a fundraising process, so they've got to be able to say, you know, to their donors that this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and we're doing it at a reasonable cost, and donors want to know that that's the case. But I think generally, doing a sustainable project for a not-for-profit enhances the story that they can tell to donors, and I think is in the end a benefit to trying to raise capital funds when they do.
So it's instead of a challenge, it's really an opportunity.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
And looking more at the questions, are there any financial advantages to nonprofits for having a higher LEED score as opposed to a lower one? How does that play out?
Financial benefits?
Yeah.
I don't think there are any direct financial benefits, uh, other than, as I said, maybe reduced operating expenses over time. And again, the ability to tell a story that donors are going to be more compelled to support financially. So I think it does have a benefit, uh, in the bigger picture.
Got it. Great. Do we have any other questions? Here we go. At what point in the capital planning process should an organization bring you in?
Right at the beginning. No, I think as early as possible in the process. It I think that in order to develop a great fundraising campaign, to reach out to donors, to start to tell the story about an organization, a lot of the times, visuals are important to tell their story and say this is what we're trying to achieve. So doing a certain amount of design work and sorting out the program and understanding what the story is that they're telling is an important part of that, and that can only happen if we're involved early on.
Yeah, I've been involved in a number of with a number of clients and organizations I'm involved with, and having that initial concept rendering as part of even the pre-capital campaign work, the soft campaign
Yeah.
would get people so excited, in some cases really galvanizing a board to expand itself and take a lot of really important steps. So I'm
Yeah.
a full supporter of bringing you in on day one.
And it sets the parameters for everyone too, because I think especially these days with cost escalation being what it is, and kind of turmoil in the construction industry in terms of lead times and supply side things, that having a vision set down and images and some design that can be estimated in terms of what the actual cost is likely to be, then sets reasonable parameters for everybody to work with, and eliminates the surprises later on when somebody says, well, I thought this was going to be 5 million, how come it's 8? And by defining as much as possible up front can help when I set targets for the fundraising campaign.
That's great. We've got another question. How does LEED dovetail with LL97 in New York? So maybe you can explain the question and then
okay,
give us an answer.
Oh, well, Local Law 97 is recently added local law in New York City that requires owners of buildings to upgrade their energy performance, and then in a not the best carrot and stick kind of approach, but it penalizes owners who don't upgrade the performance of their buildings by charging a penalty, a fee based on their energy use. You can offset that by buying green credits. You can do a lot of things, but the intent of Local Law 97 is to upgrade as many buildings as possible in the city to higher performance. Doing a LEED project or converting an existing building by upgrading its envelope and its systems and its performance all go to addressing the Local Law 97 goals. Doing quite that are specifically addressing the building envelope itself. It doesn't have Local Law 97 there's not a direct connection to the interiors and fit out, except that, you know, energy use in the building is certainly a big part of Local Law 97. So you can have spaces that are not necessarily LEED designed, but the building system can be form of higher the Local Law 97 target.
So would it be correct to say that LEED design or LEED building would help you comply with Local Law 97, or doing a renovation that is
There's
LEED
no
compliant?
question. Yeah, there's
Gets
no
you there.
question that doing a LEED compliant building conversion or fit out or whatever will contribute significantly to meeting the Local Law 97 goal. Yeah.
All right. Do we have any other questions from our studio audience today? All right, well, let me thank you, Guy. Oh, we've got another one. Let's see. Oh, it's a thank you. That's my cue. That's my cue. Thanks so much for this really informative presentation, showing examples and giving us some ways to think about green design. I think it's something that those of us who work in the sector, however we support our clients, we're often brought in at some point, whether it's on the capital campaign development side, or for me on the legal side, and for many of our colleagues, you know, when you're working with an organization, you hear what's going on, and being able to just contribute to that thinking, and you know, particularly at the early stage when these ideas first come up, often with new board members and new directors, they'll talk about some capital initiatives, and it's great to be able to um, have a little bit of knowledge in that area and know the people that they should be talking to. So thanks, Guy, and what a fantastic breakfast briefing by you, one of our newest members. Glad you're part of Mission Control, and thank you everyone for participating today.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and it's been my pleasure, and I'm enjoying being part of Mission Control. I look forward to seeing some of you, all of you, in the near future. All
right, and for the near future, I think our next breakfast briefing will be the morning of May 11th. So stay tuned to your inbox, and we'll send information about that. If you missed part of today's briefing, or if you know people who you think would benefit from seeing it, it will be posted sometime in the next week on the Mission Control website, which is missioncontrolny.org. And we look forward to seeing you at our next briefing. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody.